Welcome to the Data Analysis End-to-End project, where we're going to be building a database based on some Excel files, connecting that database to Power BI, and creating a Power BI dashboard with some animations and some other cool features. So here's our data analysis workflow. We are going to create that database, develop the SQL queries, connect that Power BI to our database, build a dashboard in Power BI, and then we're going to answer a central analysis question that we have gotten from our stakeholders. So here is the email request for the dashboard and the data. And it's usually not disorganized, but this will give you an indication. It says, "Dear Data Analyst, we need your expertise to develop a dashboard for Toman Bike Share that displays key performance metrics such as the requirements indicate hourly revenue analysis, profit and revenue trends, seasonal revenue, and rider demographics." This is something that needs to follow the company colors according to the design and aesthetics. We are going to use the data source, which is the database that we are going to create, and I'm going to show you how to do that step by step. We are going to need to deliver this ASAP. And then we have the central analysis question, which is, please provide recommendations on raising prices next year. So that is our central analysis question. This is a great project for anyone who is new to data analysis. I'll show you step by step how to do everything. So let's get started. We need to install SQL Server and SQL Server Management Studio. We used to be able to do these all in one. So this is going to be the SQL Server Management Studio. And the previous screen is going to be your server. So you can think about, we're going to get the server and then we're going to download the platform on top of it. So you're just going to get the Express version here. And you can see it's free. So you're just going to download this at the link, and then it's going to go and download that in your browser. It's an exe file. So if you end up clicking on it, it's going to allow you to install it. So we click on that. Let's let it load. And this is just going to install the process. Just choose basic for your installation type. You want to accept the agreement, and then we are going to initiate the install. And now this is going to take a little bit of time to install. So I'm going to let this install, and then we can move forward with everything after it's done. So we get to this screen where you can see it installed the 2022 version successfully. And now what we can do is, even here, we don't need to go over to the other screen because you can see it says install SQL Server Management Studio. So from this window, we can make the installation. Here are some of the things that we'll look at a bit later in terms of versions. So I'm going to hit this install SQL Server Management Studio. And you see it took us to that same screen we saw before. And I'm just going to go here to download SQL Server Management Studio. And we should be able to here. So we're going to download the version here. You can see it's version 20. And we can see it downloading in the corner here. So now that it's downloaded, it's an exe file. So I'm going to click into it. So it should execute. And you can see here's the SQL Server Management Studio, release number 20. I'm going to install that. And then we're going to be given to the screen. Just hit yes. So it's going to take a little bit of time. So I'm going to pause it and then come back to the screen once it's done. So you see here, we're all good to go. We can close this. And then we can launch the program. So I'm just going to go into my search and go to SQL Server Management Studio. So I'm using version 20. You see I have the previous version 19. So I'm going to get the new version that we just installed, which is 20. And you can see the version there. And you can see, would you like to import the user settings from the previous version? So for this purposes, I'm going to start fresh so we're all on the same page. So I'm going to put do not import. You won't have that screen if you've done this for the first time. So then you're going to be given this screen. Now this screen's kind of important. This is going to be the database engine that we've connected to, that SQL Server here. You can see this is your server name, so don't forget this. It's going to pop up every time you load it, so you don't really have to worry so much about it. And you can see we authenticate with Windows, so we're not actually having to put a password in because we've authenticating with our Windows password. And then if we hit connect here, you're going to get this error. So make sure that you are going to click the option that gives you the ability to trust this certificate. We want to make sure that you hit trust the service certificate, go to connect, and then you should be good to go. And then we will start with our loading in our data. So now that we're here, you can look over at the left corner here and you can see where we have database security, server objects, replication management, and event profiler. So obviously we want to stick to this section because we're trying to build a database. So if you hover over that and then you right click it, you can see you can create a new database. So we're going to create a new database. And then we need to give it a name. I'm just going to call this our bike data. So I hit bike underscore data. And then I'm going to go over to OK. And now you can see on the left side here, you can see bike data. Now, once you have a database, we can start adding tables to that database. Now that we have our database, we want to be able to add tables to this database so that it is populated and we can access these tables via SQL query. So now that we have our database created, what we want to do is navigate over to that database and we want to right click it. And what this is going to give us is options here, and we want to navigate over to task and go to import flat file. This is going to be able to show us that the ability to import that Excel file into a database. So we are going to hit import flat file. And then from there, what you're going to do, you're going to be presented with this window. You're going to go to next. Then you're going to indicate where that file is on your system. I'm going to go to Bike Share 0, which is on my system here. This is the first year in the bike data set. Then what we want to do is click into that, and this is going to give us the schema, which is kind of how to access that database and the table. This is going to be your table name. You can change it to something else you like. I'm just going to leave it as that. And then I am going to click next. Now you're going to be presented with the ability to preview the data. And then you have this option here to use rich data type, which may provide a closer type to fit. Now, this sometimes causes problems. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to uncheck that, and I'm going to click next. And this is going to show you all the data types. And then I'm going to click next again. And this is going to show us just a summary of what's being added. I'm going to go to finish. And then you can see that operation is complete. And I'm going to close this window. And then what I'm going to do is navigate back over to this section, and I'm going to hit refresh. So that table is refreshed in there under the Bike Share database. I'm going to click into tables. And now you can see our Bike Share database. I'm going to right click that, and then I'm going to select the first 1,000 rows. And then what you're going to see is a SQL query here and all of your data here. So now we're going to just navigate over and bring in the other tables in the same fashion. So now that we have everything ready, and we've already ran this particular script, we don't need it, and we can start building our SQL query from the beginning. So what I'm going to do is eliminate all this, and I'm going to go to select everything from, and then I'm going to go back to that bike share table. We don't need to indicate the DBO part because we've already highlighted in the database management system that we're in this particular database. So what we're going to do is we're just going to write bike share data, and you can see it pops up in the IntelliSense, and you can see the database here. So I'm going to click that, and now you can see that this is all set. Now, one thing you can do while you're in here, if you want to make things bigger, you definitely can in terms of font. So what I'm going to do is I want you to navigate over to Tools. In the top, go to Options. And now you can see that you can change some of these settings. I'm going to go down to fonts and colors. And then under fonts and colors, I'm going to increase my font size in the text editor to, I'm going to say 12 or 13. You can also click into the other parts, for example, for the grid results, which are the bottom section here. You can also create a larger size. You can see mine is quite small. So I'm going to go to, I'll keep that at 11. Now you can see you're going to get this error that says that might not be reflected when you run the query. So I'm just going to hit OK. Sometimes you need to restart that. So now I'm going to run this. You can already see that this has gotten bigger. And if I execute that, this still stays small because we need to restart it. But you can see that our query is much bigger now. Okay, so let's dive into our query here. So you can see that this is broken up between a select command. So what we're doing, we're selecting from this table. We're using a wildcard here, which means that we're selecting everything as opposed to these individual columns. And then we're selecting from the bike share table. And this is going to reward us with all of the columns and all of the rows from that particular table. Now, what we can do if we want, we can just select a single column. So you have a column here called season. If I just type in season, you can see this particular icon, and you can see that this column and the data type, and you can see that not null there. So if I run this, and the way you're running this, you can use this execute here. So if you hover over that, you can execute with F5 also. And you can see it just brings back that particular table as opposed to the wildcard here, which is there. Now, you know that we brought in 3 different tables. So we need to start bringing those tables together. And the way we're going to do that is with a join. So we're going to join those tables. We're going to join the cost table, but we also have this table here called Bike Share Year 1. And if I just change that and I execute, you can see that those tables virtually look the same. And that's because one is 2022, which is the Bike Share Year 1. And then you can see here, this is 2021. So the way we want to connect those tables is stack them on top of one another. And the way we're going to do that is with an append. And in SQL, the way you append is to use a union. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy this table. And I'm going to make a space here. And now we have those 2 tables if we change this to 1. And the way we're going to connect that is with a union. And you can see in between those two commands, we have a union. And if I execute here, now you can see we have 2001, 2021, and then further down we have 2022. So now those two tables are connected as one, and you have your union table. Now let's talk about the difference between union and union all. Union all is just going to bring back everything in your table. This union will remove duplicated rows. And because our rows are unique, so if we choose union all, I want you to pay attention to this number down here. It's 34,758 rows. If we use union all, let's see if that number changes. You can see it's the same, which indicates that we don't have any duplicated rows. So it's up to you whether you want to use union or union all, but our data set has unique rows, so we are good to move forward. So as you can see here, my table got a little bit bigger. I just quickly restarted. Now that we have this union table here, we might want to take a look at their existing table. And this is considered one pull or one select of the data. So we can just go here and do another select statement and say select everything from the cost table. And as you can see, that's not popping up, and because it's cost table. And sometimes you need to specify the schema, but let's run this and see if we get a result. And you can see here we have two data pulls for these queries. I have my price and my cost of goods in this table, and then I have this table here. So now we have the challenge of connecting those. So you can see there's a column here that says year, and it's connected with zeros and ones. And we also have a column here with zeros and ones. So what we want to do is we want to join it to this union table. Now, we could do that in a few different ways, but one of the easiest ways to keep your code super clean is we can turn this into a CTE, which is a common table expression. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to write with, and then I'm going to give this table a name. I'm just going to call it CTE as, and then what we want to do is encapsulate that table in parentheses. Now I can select from this table. So I'm going to change this to CTE. And you can see when I run this, it's going to select from that table. Now, once I have that table, what I can do is now join the cost table to this CTE table. And we want to be able to left join that because we don't want to inner join. We want to left join so we get all of the records from our left table, which is going to be our main table here, which is a CTE. And we want that to match to the cost table and to bring back all the rows from the left and match it. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with left join. And then what do we want to join? We want to join that cost table. And then we need to specify the keys to join it on. So we want to join it on. And a real easy way to not have to write these tables again is you could alias this as A and you could alias this as B. And what we can say is like that table now has an alias of A. We can say A YR because that's the column here equals B dot YR. And then if we run this, you can see we get a table back, and what we get back now, you see the number of rows haven't changed, but we get the price and cost of goods connected to that table. So now that we have our base query done, what I want to do is go ahead and just indicate the columns that I want. And I don't need all of these columns, so I'm going to just take the ones that I figure are important to me. So let me just quickly do that. So I'm just going to get rid of that individual wildcard and just list the columns. So I'm going to take the date, the season, the year, and we can always add these later. I'm going to take the writer type, the writers, the price, and the cost of goods. And the way we do that is just add those in there. So you can see they'll start to pop up as you type them. So I'm just going to quickly add them. So now that we have all the columns, you can see everything is highlighted here. And then you can see that there's a little bit of an issue here where it says that this is ambiguous. And that's because we have two columns here where we have the year. And the way we can just take care of that is just add that as an A. And we run that. And now you see we have a table. And the reason I added A because this is going to be the A that from where we actually join is going to be the A from the table that we appended. So it's that first table that we had, and we put the alias. So now what we can do is we have this information, but I want to add some more. We can do a calculation here because now we have price and cost of goods. We can start doing some information, and it looks like we want to multiply. See, we need to multiply the writers times the price to get the overall revenue. So what you can do is just write writers times the price, which is literally quantity times price. And I'm going to call that as, and then make sure you have a comma after the last one. And I'm going to call that as revenue. And then I'm going to run this. And then now you see that we have the revenue column there. Another column that I want is profit. So I can use writers times price and then minus the cost of goods. And I'm going to call this our profit. You got to make sure that you have a comma after everything. And the order of operations should take care of this, and we should get the profit. So I'm going to run that. And now you see we have profit. So now we can use this information and this query to bring it into Power BI. So this is the dashboard that I've created that kind of answers all of the requirements that we've gotten from our management that we saw in the email. It's going to be very simple and easy to navigate, which was one of the requirements. And you can see it has the company logo. It has the ability to select between the 2 years. Our data set's slightly different that we've just been working on, but the numbers should be pretty accurate. You can see this 2011 and 2012 instead of 21 and 22. So we're going to rebuild this dashboard with our data. It has all the things that we were at, revenue and profit over time, revenue, profit, and the customer base and the profit margin there. We also will have the revenue per hour, the revenue broken up by season, and our writer demographics that they asked for. So we're going to just rebuild this. And what I need you to do is go ahead and download Power BI Desktop on your machine so that you can have this ready to go. And then we'll start connecting our Power BI and building this from scratch. So I've opened up a notepad here and dropped in the query. And I've also opened up a new instance of Power BI that we can use to create our query. So if you go to this new notebook and you go to get data and we go down to SQL Server, what's going to happen is we need to put our server in and our database is optional, and then we can either bring in our query here, in which we can use that we have just copied. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to navigate back over here. And you definitely have your ability to get your server here. It's a little bit difficult to copy, but if you just copy and click that and you click connect, you can see that the server name will pop up. So I can just copy that. And then I can go back over and go to SQL Server here. And then I type in my server. And remember, we can put our database in. So remember that our database is Bike Share data here. So I'll go back over and click Bike Share data. And we just make sure, it's called bike data. So let's just get rid of the share. Bike underscore data. And then we can go to advanced here. We can get our query. We can copy and paste that. And now you can look at the connectivity modes if you want. So if you use import here, it's only going to refresh as you indicate when it should be refreshed. So if there's like up-to-date data, you will need to refresh that on demand. As for the direct query, any changes in that data set are going to be picked up. But this kind of may kind of result in slower performance sometime when you're DAX. But in this case, we're just going to leave it as import, and we have our query in there. And then what we can do here is we can just hit OK. And now you see what we've been given. We need to give our credentials. So remember that we use Windows as our credentials. So you can say just use my credentials. And you can see the server name is here and the table is here. If you have changed anything, you can use alternate credentials. I'm just going to click connect. And now you're going to be given this option to that's telling you that about the encrypted connection. We are using encrypted, so we're just going to go ahead and move forward. It's connecting to the server. And then you can see that we're bringing in the data that we created with that query. And I'm just going to load this. And you should see that query pop up here. And it's called query. And then that's brought in all our 34,786 rows. And then here's our data. So let's go ahead and build our dashboard now that our data is inside. So the first thing I want to do is create a header. So I'm going to go to Insert, and then I'm going to go to Shape. And then I'm just going to click into the the rectangle, and I'm going to bring that in as a kind of header. I'm going to change the color of that just by going to the style and going over, and I'm going to pick that dark blue. And then we have a header. Now I want to utilize the cards. So I'm going to go over and click into a blank spot. I'm going to use this new card here. And it needs a value. So I'm just going to bring any value in. And then I'm going to turn that value off. So I'm going to go to call out values. And I'm going to take away the call out values. And I'm going to take away the label title. I'm going to also add an accent bar. And I'm going to make sure that accent bar is a similar color. And I also would like to have a border, which we have, and I'm going to add a shadow. So now I have this bar here, and I'm going to bring this up a bit. And I need to also remove this exterior here. You can see that is in the way. And I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is just hover over to this effects and go to background and just turn off the background. So now I have that first section. I'm going to copy and paste it. And then I'm going to pull this over here. And then I am going to just reshape it where we have that section. And now we have two sections here. So now we have three sections in which to build our dashboard. So the first thing I'm going to do is add my little animation here. So I'm going to copy one of these cards here. And then I'm going to go to like a site like, Icon Scout, or you can literally just Google animated GIFs here, Google bicycle animated GIFs, and you'll be able to click into these or get some. Or you can visit a site like Giphy, and it will give you all kind of options there. I found this animation here. Let me just copy and paste that in. So I'm going to use this animation here for my animation. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go back over to our dashboard. And then here I have this card that I copied. Let's go ahead and go to card. And I want to turn off some of the things here. I don't need all these things. And accent bar. Okay, so now we just have a plain old image there. And I want to go over and let's close this and go to images on that card. I am going to turn on my image here, and then I'm going to use the image URL, and I copied that URL I got from Giphy, and then boom, there you go. You have your animated GIF. Then all I need to do is kind of resize that into what I want, and then I'm going to put it over in like a corner here. And now you got this animated GIF. Now you can see that you have this border around it, so we need to get rid of that. So let's just go over and turn off border. So that part is done. Now we want to start building our table here. So let's get our table. We need hours, and the table that we need is a matrix. So I hit the matrix visual, and then I'm going to use hour, and I want the hour to be my rows, and I want the revenue to be my values here. And I want the average revenue, so I'm going to change that to average by just clicking the down arrow once you drop that in values. And then let's change the title to just revenue. Just double click it, and then you'll have the revenue broken up by hour. And then now we need our weekday, and we want the weekday to be our column. And now what you can see here is we have a table that we have. And let's go ahead and optimize this table. So I don't want subtotals on the columns or the rows. I also don't want any style. So I'm going to go click style presets. I'm going to go to none. And then you can see that gets smaller. I want to make those values a little bit smaller. So I'm going to go to values, and then I'm going to go down to 8. And that gives us the ability to bring that in. Now, this table is a little bit larger, so let's make these a bit shorter. I am going to now have this table here, but I don't want all of the hours. I just want working hours. Click this off, and actually now I want to go over to our transform data, because this is a text field, and I would much prefer it to be a numeric field. So you can see here the data types. So I can try to change it to a whole number here and see if it works. And we can see that changes. And then now if we click back into this, we should be able to bring that in again. So I'm going to go back over here, go to hour, bring hour in again as rows. And now when we have it in, we can make it easier. Let's say greater than, I want everything greater than 7 a.m. And I want everything less than, let's say 9 p.m., which is going to be 21. So I'm going to apply that. And you can see that table gets smaller. The header here and the columns to make that small also. And now we have a table. It's a bit small, so we might have to play with the text sizing later. So for this, I do want to turn this into a currency. So you can see I have revenue highlighted here. I'm going to go over to currency, and then this should give us everything in currency, but you see it gives us all these decimal points. I don't really care about decimal points for this, so I'm going to leave it at 0. So you can see I changed that to 0. And now you can see that table, it gives us much more room, and we can play with the sizing a bit later. You might also want to think about adding some conditional formatting here, but let's finish our dashboard first. I want to start adding some text, so let me just quickly add some text. I'm going to go to a text box, and then I'm just going to use the GUI or whatever you would like. I'm going to use the GUI bold. I'm going to change the size, and I am going to put that next to your bike, and that's just kind of a call out title that we can kind of use. We can remove the background and stuff if we need to. So now we have that part. We can add the text that's going to go under this, which is just going to be kind of a summary of this table. I won't bore you with me writing that. I'm just going to copy and paste it in. Next, let's start building our revenue over time. So make sure you're not clicked on any visual here. And we don't want to be clicked on any one of these cards, because we want to add a new visual. So we're going to go over to this with this line chart here with clustered columns, and you can see it gives us a new chart. We have our column here, which is the date, and you can see by the column icon here. And then what we want to be able to do is we want to have riders as our column. So you can go here and you can take the riders, and we want that to be our column on our y-axis. And you can see when you do this, what happens is it's going to be broken down in the year. Let's take it down to month. And we don't actually need to have quarter here, because you can see how it's broken up in quarter. So you can go over to the x-axis and you can click that off. And that's going to be the first part of our visual here. Now, that is going to be the riders. And now we still have a data type issue. So you can see that it's coming in as a count, and that's not what we want. So let's hover over this, and let's go over and turn this into a number. We want to turn it into a whole number. As we have clicked onto it, we go over to whole number and click yes. It's just going to give us an update there. And now you can see this summary symbol on riders. Now, if we bring that into our column as the y-axis, you can see it has much more of a seasonal shape, which is one of the things that they wanted from us anyway, to know what the seasonality was. So now that is the first part of what we want to do. We can also make this a little bit nicer by going over and clicking into the paintbrush, going over to, where is it, our column. And now this is a color that we have, but it's not the color we want. We want to click over to where it says conditional formatting next to it, which is that function symbol there. And I am going to choose the light gray here, and then I'm going to choose dark blue, the blue that we use for the heading. And take a look at what the field is. It says, what field should we base this on? We want to base it on the riders. And now you can see that it's going to be based on the sum of the riders. And if I hit OK, now you can see that it looks a little bit better. Now let's also come in and go back over to this section, and we want to bring in our profit as one of the lines. And then we also want to be bringing in revenue as one of our lines, but probably not sum. Let's do average. So let's go average, and then average again. And now you can see those are there. what we want to do is go over to your visual here, and let's kind of improve the way this looks a bit. All right, let's go to y-axis. So here you want to go to your secondary y-axis, and then we'll put this on align 0. So there we go. And then let's navigate down the line. We want to turn on markers for my individual. We're going to go back over here. We change this to riders just by clicking into it. I'm going to get rid of some of the title for the x-axis, APIs over time. I'm going to go back and change the Sugoi, change that color. So that'll do for our bar over time. And now we can easily get our other visuals. So all we need to do is go to season. Make sure you're not clicked on any visual. I'm going to choose a horizontal bar chart here. Then I'm going to use season. That's going to be your y-axis. And then I'm just going to put revenue. You can do average, or you can do everything. I am going to go with the paintbrush, choose the labels, and that's going to give us the average or the sum, whatever you prefer. I am going to click into the bar, and then I'm going to just change that to one solid blue color. And then I am going to just bring that down here. And I think I prefer this to be not necessary the average. I'm going to change that back to the sum. You can definitely change that to conditional formatting if you want. So there you go. And then we need one more visual, which is the demographics of our rider. So now I'm just going to go into rider type and then go and click riders. Then now we have this as a table. We can just quickly go over and we can choose a donut chart. That's going to give me a donut chart. And I am just going to put that here in this section. I'm going to get rid of the legend. And then I am going to work on the slices. I want similar colors, so I'm going to use gray. Let's use gray for the smallest one, and then gray here. And then I need to work on the title for my labels here. So go to data labels. We like that it's outside. Click. And then we want for our values here, we want the category and the percent of total. So now you can see the casual and the rider. And now let's change the title to these two things very quickly. Now that we have that, just let's put a line to separate these two. So we're going to go to Insert, Shape. I'm just going to get this line here. Let's change the color. So we can go to Style, go to, and I'm just going to choose that blue again that we keep choosing, which is here. Then I'm going to go to Rotation. I'm going to put that at 90 degrees, so it's straight up. And then this is going to separate our two visuals here. Next, we need to work on our header and the profit margin. So you can see as I'm visually looking at these lines, I have realized that I made an error in one of my calculations. And the beautiful thing about this is we can go back into our SQL code and fix it. So I am going to go to transform data. And then there's an issue with our cost of goods. So I'm going to click into this. And then you see the query is there. So I'm going to click into source. And let's go back to our SQL query here. And then when we created our revenue column where there's profit, we minus riders times the price. Now, cost of goods is cost of goods for each one of those bikes. So we actually need to multiply that by riders also. And now we're going to just change that. And that's going to update our information. Should be pretty substantial now. And then I am going to close and apply. And now you can see the real delineation between those two. So we will fix this now with coloring. So we have that color, and let's change. So once you go to line, you're going to go to average of profit and then go to color. And then let's maybe change that to like a yellow or something like that. And then there we go. So now we have that fixed. I'm going to shorten this a little bit and move this here. And then I'm just going to copy this whole table here, this whole visual. And then I'm going to go over to the visuals. And then I'm going to turn this into a new card like this. And you can see what we have here for revenue and profit. And we probably need to change those around to the average of revenue and average of profit. I want the sum so you can see the difference there. And then I don't want the riders. And now what I want to do is I don't want these to be stacked like this. I want to go over and I want to stack them on top of each other. So then I go over to the paintbrush, go to layout, and put a single column. Let's make these very tight and small. So these are too big at the moment. So let's go out and let's go to our call out values. And then we want to make that Segoy also. Let's go to card. And then for the card, the background, I want to make it this color like that. I want to increase transparency. So it's really light color like that. And I want to turn on glow. So it sits out like that. And then I'm going to just, make these a little bit better shaped. Now we have this card done and ready to go. So let's do our header. So all we need to do is go back over to that card again, and let's get a card. And then we want to be able to bring in the, let's say, the number of riders we have. And then there is a profit margin which we need to calculate. So we can just quickly do that by right-clicking over to our query table and going to our new measure here. And then we can calculate the profit margin here by just saying the sum of the revenue in that query table minus profit, sum of profit. And then we want that to be divided by the sum of profit. And then I am going to just encapsulate that first part. And then we're going to call this our profit margin. And this should be okay. So now that the profit margin is there, we can bring that in as our second part of the data. Something is not right. I believe we're missing, and it's there. This is what I did wrong. There we go. And then we get that 45. So that should be at 45%. Now what I want to do is be able to add an image here to each one of these. So we can go to a website called Flat Icons, and Flat Icons will have a lot of different images that we can use. So you can literally type in something that you want here, so we can get the icons maybe like registered or something. For a clipboard, you can see I can get this clipboard here and I can download it as a PNG, go into free download here. And that's going to be one of the downloads. Now that those are downloaded, what you can do, you can click into your card, you can go to images, and where it has applied to the series, I'm going to go with the first one is writers, and I'm just going to turn on the images for on. Then I'm going to browse, and I'm just going to go to that part that I downloaded here that should be in my download. And then you can see that you've gotten that in. I'm going to turn off the fixed size there. And then we should be able to image area size it here so you can see how that works. But we'll deal with that in a minute. Then we want to do the same for the next one. So we go back up, go to profit margin, turn image on, browse, turn off fixed size, and then you can play around with it. So here, I'm going to bring this up to this section here. And I'm just going to adjust the size and turn off the background. I'll go into cards, you turn off the background, turn off the borders, go to effects, and turn off that background also. And now for our headers, we need to change that on the cards. So I want to make sure that the values are this color blue. And then I want the heading to be white. Go to label and white. I'm going to move this where it's a little bit smaller and put this in the corner. Sum of writers. And I'm going to just change this to writers. So just double click and write writers. Now, we just need to add a title and a logo. So I am going to just get a insert here, go to a circle, and I'm going to make that circle smaller where it fits in the corner here. And I am going to change the styling here, turn it white. I'm going to turn a border on. And you see it has a border. I'm going to turn it over to that light blue. And then I'm going to increase the border size here like this. I'm just going to make sure I have enough space to put my logo. And the logo, I'm just something that I downloaded from Flat Icon. And then I'm just going to just put this image inside here. So that's our bike. Just go to effects and turn off the background. And the last thing we want to do is create a filter. So you want to go over to the filter here where it's a slicer. And then you can bring in a filter that you like. I'm just going to bring in year here. And we probably want to change this from, 0 and 1 to something that is a little bit better. But let's first create this. So let's go to this slicer, and you see if we click it, it will slice everything. So let's go over to the styling here, slicer settings. Let's turn that into a tile. We want to just do the same things. We go to effects. I'm going to turn on the visual border. I'm going to turn off the background. And here we can kind of place this where we want. So you can see we can place it here, maybe, and maybe move these over a little. Now, we want to go in and be able to change this a little bit. So we're going to go back over to home, go to transform data. I want you in transform here. So once you're in here, I want you to go over to add a column and then go to conditional column. So we're going to get that column named year. If year equals 0, we're going to say 2021. And if year equals 1, we're going to go 2022. And then we just hit OK. And then we have this new column. We can call that years. And then we can close and apply this. And now we have this years column here, and you could just pull this over where your slicer is, and we just replace it with years. And now you can use this slicer to slice everything that you have. And that's our dashboard. Let's answer the central question. So now that we have all our data in one place, I can just evaluate whether we can raise the prices for the upcoming year, which was our central question. So first, what we're going to do is just create a matrix here. We have our year, and now that we have years, let's just go ahead and add that in. And then I want to be able to look at the riders. I want to be able to look at revenue. And I also want to look at our profit, which these shouldn't change this much. In terms of what we are looking at. And then we want to look at how much we raise the price. So we want to take, for price, we don't want to take the sum. We can literally take the first or average because it's the same. So it should be all the same. So we raise the price by, looks like we raised the price by $1. And then we saw this gigantic increase in profit and gigantic increase in riders. So we need to do some calculations here to see if we can make that leap. But I think, it's pretty clear that if our riders were able to sustain a pretty sizable increase in our price, and then we saw also a increase in riders year on year, I think we're pretty good. And profit, also, there's no change. So let's get out our calculator and do some analysis. So let's first calculate our change in price. So that looks around 25% to me. So we have a new price of $4.99. Our old price was $3.99. So we take the difference there, which is just $1, and then we're going to divide that by our old price, which is $3.99. So you can see we had a 25% increase in price. So although we had that 25% increase, we saw a giant jump in our revenue. So let's look at the demand of the riders as our proxy. So let's keep that number down for us. And here's my notepad. So I'm just going to write 25% price increase. And then let's see what the demand difference is. So let's move this over a bit. Put this here. And then we can say, okay, let's clear this. And we see that we had about 2 million riders in 2022. So the difference between 2021, so we had a million, about 1.2 million. So the difference is we have 806,000. Now let's get the percentage increase by just dividing this value by our older value, which is at 3. So you can see we had a 64% increase in demand. So let's say 64% increase in demand. So obviously, if we increase the price by 25% and we still saw an increase of 64%, we can feel with a pretty high degree of confidence that if we increase the price a little bit more, it shouldn't affect demand. Now, that's assuming everything works in a linear way. And there is a metric that people use for this. So the metric that we use to kind of usually understand that price is something called price elasticity. And it's just dividing the price the increase in demand by the increase in pricing. Usually that's a negative number, but we obviously see ours is not going to be negative. So that's 65 divided by that 64. Let's go back. Let's clear. 64 divided by that 25 is going to give us 2.56% price elasticity. And usually what this means is that it can tolerate an increase. Usually this number is negative, saying that if we increase the price, the demand will go down by 2.5%. 6 cents, but however, in our case, it goes up. So there's obviously other things at play, but it's pretty clear we can increase the price very conservatively. So here's my recommendations. I said, let's conservatively increase things by 10 to 15%, because I believe there are other market factors that are driving up that demand, because our riders went up by that substantial 64%. So we know that we increased the price by 25%, which is $4.99. From $3.99 to $4.99. So a 10% increase would be $5.49. 15% increase would be approximately $5.74. So what we could do is just take a conservative range there and test the market. But I think there are other market factors like environment, or maybe there's just a demand. We have to look at marketing. We can segment our rider types to see if there's something there. But I think we feel pretty confident that we can increase our prices pretty conservatively. I would go with 10% and test the market and see how our customer base responds and take it from there. And we will monitor and adjust. I hope that kind of takes you through the whole life cycle of an end-to-end data analysis project. Please put any comments, questions below, and don't forget to subscribe. And hey, please make some adjustments to my dashboard to make it more beautiful.